Whispers from the Attic, A Curse Unveiled. Chapter 1. The Beginning. It all started on a cold autumn night. I was sitting in my old house on the outskirts of the city, preparing to go to bed. The wind howled outside the windows, and the tree branches creaked as if trying to share some mysterious secret. I had always been a skeptic, never believing in ghosts, demons, or anything supernatural, but that night changed my life forever. The house I lived in had been in my family for over 100 years. It had a long history filled with both happy and tragic moments. However, I never gave much thought to the old stories my grandparents used to tell about strange occurrences in the house. Around midnight, I went to bed, leaving the hallway light on because I'd always hated complete darkness. I was just beginning to drift off when I heard a quiet but distinct sound, as if someone was slowly stepping on the wooden stairs. At first, I thought it was just my imagination, but the sound repeated. The steps were getting closer. I held my breath, listening. "Who's there?" I asked loudly, but there was no response, just silence. I got out of bed, grabbed a flashlight, and stepped into the hallway. The stairs led to the attic where old things were stored, untouched for decades. I looked up and saw that the attic hatch was slightly ajar. This surprised me since I distinctly remembered closing it a few days ago after searching for an old photo album. Chapter 2. The Attic. Holding the flashlight, I slowly climbed the stairs to the attic. The air was thick and stale, as if it had been trapped for decades. I shone the flashlight around but saw nothing unusual. Just old boxes, furniture covered in thick layers of dust, and cobwebs. But then I noticed something strange. In the far corner of the attic, where there had always been just an empty wall, there were now odd marks. They looked like wet footprints leading to an old wardrobe. My heart began to race, but I forced myself to move closer. The footprints ended at the wardrobe door. I carefully opened it. Inside were just old dresses and coats that had belonged to my grandmother. Nothing supernatural. But as soon as I closed the doors, I heard a whisper behind me. It was a soft, barely audible voice that said my name. "Alexei!" I turned around but saw no one. Panic began to take hold, and I decided to go back to my bedroom. However, as I started descending the stairs, the attic hatch slammed shut with a loud bang, leaving me in darkness. Chapter 3. Captivity. I pounded on the hatch trying to open it, but it wouldn't budge. My heart was pounding so hard I could barely breathe. And then I heard it again. The whisper. It grew louder, blending with a strange rustling sound, as if something was moving around the attic. My flashlight suddenly went out, leaving me in complete darkness. I felt cold sweat running down my back. Suddenly, I heard heavy breathing right next to me, as if someone was standing just inches away. I couldn't move out of fear, only tightly closing my eyes and whispering, "It's just my imagination. It's just my imagination." But then something cold and slimy touched my hand. I screamed and lost consciousness. Chapter 4. The Old Truth. When I came to, I was lying on the floor of my bedroom. The attic hatch was closed and everything seemed normal. However, I knew it wasn't a dream. On my hand, there was a red mark resembling a handprint. I decided to learn more about the house's history. At the local library, I found old newspapers detailing mysterious disappearances that had occurred here many years ago. It turned out that the house's original owner, my great-grandfather, was suspected of murder but was never convicted. The article mentioned that the victims were buried somewhere on the property, but the bodies were never found. I started digging through old documents and even hired a local historian to help me. We found an old floor plan of the house, which showed another room that was supposed to be behind the attic wall. Chapter 5. The Secret Room. I climbed back into the attic, this time armed with a crowbar and flashlight. According to the plan, the room was behind the same wall where I had seen the footprints. I began prying away the boards, and behind them was a narrow door. Cold air wafted out, and something told me I was making a big mistake. Behind the door was a small room containing only a table and a chair. On the table lay an old diary, and the walls were covered in strange writings that looked like some kind of spell. The diary belonged to my great-grandfather. In it, he described performing rituals to gain power and wealth, but something went wrong. He wrote about a being that came to him and how it took his mind and soul. Suddenly, I heard the same footsteps behind me. They were heavy and loud. I turned sharply and saw it, a figure in the darkness, faceless but staring directly at me. Chapter 6. Escape or End. I dropped the diary and bolted down the stairs. This time the attic hatch wasn't locked, and I managed to get out. I left the house that same night and never returned. But even now, living in a different city, I feel like something is watching me. Every night I hear those same footsteps outside my bedroom door. Sometimes they stop, and I hear a whisper. Alexei, you can't escape. I don't know how much longer I can endure this. If you're reading this, know. Some secrets are better left undiscovered. Chapter 7. The Return of Horror. It seemed like I had started a new life, but it all came back the day I received a letter with no return address. It contained only one sentence. Did you think you could escape? That evening, I heard the whisper in my apartment, even though I was sure the locks were secure. From that moment, the events escalated. Objects in the apartment moved on their own, the lights flickered, and mirrors cracked. Every night, I heard the same footsteps and whispering. It seemed that this entity had found me even here. Chapter 8. The Final Attempt. I decided to return to the old house, realizing only there could I stop this. Armed with holy symbols and candles, I set out on a nighttime journey. When I entered the house, it looked abandoned, as if it had been deserted for decades, even though only a few months had passed. In the attic, I saw the same figure. It stood by the table, holding the diary. I began reciting prayers, but the entity only laughed. Its laughter echoed in my head, driving me to the brink of madness. The last thing I remember is being engulfed by a dark cold. I woke up in a hospital, told that I had been found unconscious in the house. The diary was gone. Chapter 9. The Curse. Now I know this won't end. Every night I hear its whisper. It's near, and it's waiting for me to break. This may be my final entry. If you found this text, don't make my mistake. Don't seek the truth where it's better left unknown.